Hello everybody, it's Peter with an I, S-T-A-W-A-R-T. Welcome to segment 16 of, I don't know, the Dark Tower, I guess?
Fine. He gave her a sharp little look. Joe, did I do something? She asked. No! He squealed as if he had been verbally attacked, looking back at the menu with whipped puppy eyes. Joe, if there's something you want to talk about... No, said Joe, looking around, scared to death that she would raise her voice and cause a scene. It's nothing, he replied. Mona sat there with a grin plastered on her face. The written word is such a barbaric tool, and only captures a small amount of what is really said. People who try to carry on conversations through emails find ways to compensate for the lack of mood by typing LOL, laugh out loud, to show that their mood is lighthearted and their statement shouldn't be taken point blank, or using the caps lock to show emphasis, or typing out ha ha ha. But these tools don't bring statements to life. If there were some form of written expression that incorporated musical notation, as well as phonetic letters, Joe's statement, "It's nothing," would have ended on a sour note. And the sour note would have said, "I'm upset because of you, and instead of talking about why I'm a victim, I want nothing more than for you to be eaten alive from the inside out by guilt. Guilt that feeds on your soul like swarms of hungry ants. But I'd just as soon not talk about it. Now put on a happy little smile so that I may enjoy my lunch. Bon appetit, LOL. Mona would have tried to pursue the subject, but Joe was too nervous that other people would overhear an argument between them. It would have been great if Mona drew in a full breath of air and screeched in Joe's face. He would have been beyond embarrassment. He would have physically shrunken into a little prune, and he would have stayed that way until he could sneak out like an unseen mouse. Joe sat looking at the prices of the menu. They weren't extravagant, but more than he wanted to pay. He saw that Mona had her purse with her, and he wondered if she was going to take the noble road, and offered to pay. After all, she asked him to lunch. He would have preferred just to sit at home that day. Boy, nothing is free these days, is it? He gave the hint. Mona shook her head and agreed, not realizing that Joe meant the comment to be a segue. She was still trying to fight the urge to ask Joe why he was mad when he came in. She knew how some people can just come off wrong, and she decided to switch gears and give things a new start. "Can you believe the parking outside?" she asked. Joe didn't want to admit that he didn't have a car, so he just shook his head and chortled. "The new car I got is pretty big. I got it from my grandmother, who just died recently. We were pretty close." While she went on about her problems, Joe couldn't believe what he was hearing. She just wanted to schmooze right over the subject of who was paying for lunch. Here he had gone through all the trouble of meeting her there, and now she was probably gonna stick him with the entire bill, and, sure enough, the waitress would stand over them until it was paid, instead of leaving and giving Joe a chance to discuss the matter privately with Mona. Joe wondered if Mona went around doing this to guys on a regular basis. It was almost like a prostitution scam. It would have been more honest for her to just secretly drug his pop and roll him while he was out. Joe thought about such a scenario and pictured Mona rifling through his pockets, stuffing his wad of money into her bra, and shouting over his unconscious body, "Hey, this guy's trying to look at my dress!" And a bunch of military guys would trot right over and make things right by stomping his teeth out. As Mona went on about something or other, he pictured her flirting with the military guys, while he tried to focus enough to plead for his life. The absurd thought struck him as absolutely hilarious. He tried to calm himself with a glass of water. So anyway, the funeral is in a few days, but I don't know if I'll be strong enough to even go to it. She stopped short when Joe's outburst shot water everywhere. "Are you okay?" she asked. Joe tried to play it off like it was a sneeze, but he couldn't help but crack up laughing. He realized how bad it looked. I'm sorry. I was listening," he said, trying to choke off his case of the giggles. Their waitress came over to offer him a napkin. "I'm sorry. Go on." "Go on. Tell me more about your dead grandmother," said Joe, but he just couldn't contain himself, and he laughed hysterically. The waitress, who had overheard Joe's statement, stood there with a funny look on her face, wondering if that guy was for real. Meanwhile, Frank was over at the cinema, down at the end of one of the mall partitions. He would buy only one ticket, but go from one theater to the next, only staying long enough to see his beloved starlet perform in her 30-second long sequence. Anyone else had to pay for each movie they sat in on, but Frank was handsome, and he looked like a pretty cool guy. And at the same time, he obviously wasn't too bright, which worked to his advantage because people knew that he wasn't some slick talker who always had a card up his sleeve and could fool dopes into thinking he was nice when the situation called for it, but then suddenly turned vicious if need be. Frank stood there talking to the lady who sat in the ticket booth when all the movies were in full swing and neither of them had anything to do. "I don't know," continued Frank, frustrated that he couldn't pull the right words out from his brain to express what was in his heart. "If she knew how I felt, I just know that she would dig me. But if I told her straight out that I loved her, I don't know, do you think it would scare her away? What do you think?" The ticket clerk, who was an older woman, had missed the occurrence of a miracle. A member of the younger generation not only admitted that they didn't know everything, but was also asking an older person what their opinion was. It was a miracle, not in the sense that it was a particularly good thing, but merely because it was such a rarely seen thing. It was rare for a good reason. The ticket clerk drew in a breath as she searched her memory. "When my late husband took me out on our first date, he came and picked me up in his father's car," and went on to do what a third of all mature grown-ups do, and that is to go on about some situation that has importance to them, but holds no real-life lesson, or even mildly exciting climax. The other two portions of the population either stay silent or not, because they can't hear you, because the batteries in their hearing aid is low. Or they grumble and shake and tell you you're stupid. They usually do this because they're right. Frank figured out right away that her story wouldn't come to an end anytime soon, but he knew it would be rude to bluntly excuse himself. So, well, she went on, trying to get facts straight. Facts like whether it was Maui or Oahu that her husband got beaten senseless. Frank pulled over a life-sized cutout of Macaulay Culkin, who had a look of surprise on his face, with his lips puckered in an "oh." The clerk went on, delighted to see that the young man on the other side of the plexiglass was getting such a kick out of her story. Joe came back in carrying the little sack that the mini-mart attendant put his burger in. Joe thought he was so slick for getting through the doors and in through the little maze of booths without being spotted by the hostess.